Hello and welcome to Business Prime Time. The big story right now, of course, is what's happening with Jet Airways, and we at ET Now were much ahead in terms of getting you all the news flow. Now, of course, most of it is official, and probably over the next few days, you should get a lot of these changes which have been proposed at this point of time. In fact, let's keep it with that story. Mr. J.N. Gupta is now joining us. Mr. Gupta, if you could just tell us what's come out of the board meet, Goyal's to step down, Etihad's stakeholding will be reduced. How do you see these developments in terms of what has been talked about?
See, one has to see all these developments into a basic objective, and the objective that I understand what has been stated by the banks and everybody is that let airline remain afloat. Because if the airline is not afloat, it will hurt many people and all the stakeholders will be hurt, not only the shareholders, but passengers, airline industry, banks, and everybody. So the most important aspect is that the airline should be afloat. Now, because one doesn't know what has happened inside the board, but have you seen the earlier newspaper reports? Etihad was unwilling to increase its stake or contribute more. Now, the promoters of Jet, Mr. Naresh Goyal, was the person who was not seen as a fit to continue running the company. So all these factors were to be achieved by the banks in the sense that they wanted to get rid of Mr. Goyal, which has happened. That is what I have seen. Etihad was unwilling partner, so Etihad is unwilling partner. So temporary, it is a solution that the management is changed. But this is not a long-term solution because banks being a majority holder, I don't think they would be able to run an airline because running a bank and running an airline are two different ball games. However, they will have to soon find solution and find a person, a promoter who would be able to steer the airline forward. Of course, banks have to take risk. They have already written off certain loans or converted loans into things. But if you go back to the little bit history, as I have already said earlier, that somewhere the management of airline was lacking. Indigo pulled the rug below their feet and they did not know what happened. Because Indigo started 10 years back and today Indigo has more than 40% market share and Jet has come from 40% to 12% or 13%. And all the time Indigo has been making profit, whereas Jet has been losing money. So somewhere it was a management failure. And if the banks are able to get a right management and a new management as soon as possible, I think there is nothing wrong with the airline per se, except that they will have to pull their strings and make it more efficient and more cost efficient, not only operationally efficient, but as well cost efficient.
Mr. Gupta, good afternoon. This is Anita joining in from the New Delhi studio. You know, we at ET Now have been right on top of this story, reporting every twist and turn. You know, I think this story is important not just for the aviation sector at large or all of those consumers of Jet Airways that are tuning in or of other airlines tuning in, upset that they've seen their airfares soar so high. I think the larger message for corporate India, for promoters of companies, is it, and I'm asking you that, is the Jet example this, that if you don't get your act together, if you think that the banks are not going to act, that the government's not going to swing into action, especially in the consumer-oriented sectors, you are highly mistaken. Is that the big message that is also coming in? Of course, it's election year. I don't think India could afford another airline to come down. But never have you seen the banks act so swiftly, taking over the shares, deboarding the two promoters, deboarding them from the board, even though they stay on as investors. This is a larger story for corporate India and for promoters of India Inc.
See, I think one has to live into holistically. See, banks are no longer the banks which were 3 years back for various reasons. First is the bankruptcy thing coming in. The second, strict NPA norms that have been enforced and disclosures, and forcing them to act in case of NPAs are there. So banks are not going to be sitting duck anymore. That is what I feel. The second is very simply, message is very clear that if I have put my public money into your venture, you better perform or perish. So promoters who do not perform will have to give way to efficient management. That is the second part. Third part is very clearly saying that we will have to put everything in a holistic manner, in the sense that all the agencies will have to work together, because as you rightly said, the ultimate objective is stakeholders. Now, in this case, the SEBI could be involved, RBI could be involved, Ministry of Aviation could be involved. All of them have to work at the fast pace to work out a solution. It should not happen that the banks walk a mile and Aviation Ministry or SEBI is not ready to budge an inch. They will have to all come on the same page and ensure that any resolution plan which is in the interest of all stakeholders concerned is done swiftly. As you said about the airline industry, see, as it is, airline industry is in a problem. Now, there are various theories that why airline industry is problem. I only read somewhere today that because of the high aviation fuel taxes and everything, the airline is in trouble. But I don't think that could be the case. If that was the case, then how Indigo is making profits, it is one other thing. So mainly it is operational efficiency and cost efficiency which has to come into the market. And yes, India cannot afford one more airline to fail, because you have already seen a situation where Kingfisher has failed. If Jet fails, which is another big airline, and Air India already in a problem. So I think it will not be good for consumers of airline, rather air passengers. It's an interest, because the problem will be that, as you said, the airfares could skyrocket, and more so than the competition will go away, and there could be a situation where you don't have enough seats available, and then we go back to 20 years back, where you could not get tickets, and then you got to wait for tickets. So we do not want to go back into era which is 20 years back.
Okay, Mr. Gupta, can I request you to hold on? I just want to play a small soundbite of Anil Singhvi of Icon Investments. Anil Singhvi talking about the fund infusion, the promoters being asked to leave the board, and what this really means for India Inc. at large, and of course the aviation sector, Jet in particular.
I think it's a step in right direction, because if you look at the overall scheme of things in India, that if you go to IBC, in any case you lose the control. So this is a pre-IBC resolution plan rather than litigating, because many of them have gone for huge litigation once you go into the NCLT process. So I think it's much better. I think proactively the banks are looking for solutions, and I think it's high time, because if you look at the market cap of the company, which is just about 2,500 crore, versus the total outstanding loans and other dues would be in excess of 10,000 crore. So when you look at from overall perspective, it's much better that we have these kind of resolutions than litigations. Let's look at real estate and aviation, because real estate also, there are home buyers who have bought the houses and not got it. Supreme Court has held that they are even superior than the secured creditors, because I think the home buyer, because he's put his sweat and tears in buying a house, and if the developer really runs away or does not meet his contractual obligations, then it is far superior thing that a resolution isn't arrived at. People should get what they have paid for, and similar thing in aviation, because if I have booked my ticket and the airline chooses to cancel that flight and I have to wait for my refund, I think one has to be a little more proactive in these kind of B2C businesses than B2B, and airline and real estate and all are B2C. So where banks have to really draw a line to look at which companies and which sectors they really need to step in. And one has seen in last almost 12 to 18 months, I'm not being critical, but this is a fact that instead of resolution of most cases, we have gone into litigation of most cases in IBC. So I think it's much better that now the promoters should realize in India that the stage has come when they can't just keep on playing this time game, and I call it time game very, very carefully, that people have bought enormous time and then they come and put a bid. I mean, this is where one has to draw a line, and I'm glad in Jet Airways the banks have really proactively put their foot down, asked the promoters to quit the board, now reconstitute the board, infuse the fund, and put the airline back into business.
So now there is a resolution that we will have in place for Jet Airways. Mr. Gupta, you'll want to hear the next soundbite I'm going to play for my viewers. It's coming in from none other than the Secretary of the Ministry of Corporate Affairs with his take on the Jet saga so far and why it was right to not take it to the NCLT for under insolvency and bankruptcy court.
If you feel that there is inherent capacity for a company to bounce back, then I think it is best for the members of the company and the creditors to sit together and try and see how they'll be able to resolve it. If there is no agreement between the creditors and the shareholders, then you'll have to look at other possibilities, including that of IBC.
There you go, the Secretary of the Ministry of Corporate Affairs and Jyoti Srinivas on that big story. As you can see, we've got lots of experts lined up for you. J.N. Gupta, Dhiraj Mathur, Anil Singhvi. Dhiraj Mathur, if I could come to you, you track the aviation space so closely. The promoters being forced out of the board. Both Naresh and Anita Goyal have stepped down. The bankers taking the lion's share. 50.5% is what their stake is going to be. With the Goyals down, lenders have agreed to infuse 1,500 crore rupees immediately to convert debt to equity of 1 rupee each to issue 11.4 crore shares. This is a new Jet Airways that we're talking about. There's going to be a new board. Etihad stake is being pared down from 24% to 12%. Allow us to gloat. We had all these details in the morning. We said it at 8 a.m. But Dhiraj Mathur, do you agree this is a new jet? Can it fly into the safety zone and the stability zone, a zone that will attract a buyer too?
Well, look, the first task, the first task at hand is to keep the fleet size intact and get the planes flying, especially on the profitable routes. The second task is to keep the pilots and the key management team to retain them, to prevent an exodus, because that's going to make a major impact on the turnaround. They've got the funding to carry them through for 2 months, in which time, obviously, there are going to be discussions with potential strategic investors who would step in and take over and run the airlines. So I wouldn't say that this is a new jet. It certainly is a different jet, but because the person who built the entire airline is no longer on the board. But it'll take a while for a new jet to emerge. This is just early days. This is basically firefighting crisis management.
J.N. Gupta, let me come to you. This is not a brand new jet, it's a different jet. The press release promises that you're going to see the exit, you're going to see a new investor on board in the June quarter. Mr. Gupta, what's going to attract an investor? The Goyals are still an investor. They're probably going to have about a 25% stake. Etihad is not gone. Would that mean that perhaps you're going to have to see a financial investor, a private equity kind of investor coming on board? It's going to be very difficult for a new investor to manage both Naresh Goyal and an Etihad.
See, if you go back to the history, Etihad was never a promoter. At least on paper, they never declared Etihad as a promoter. Way back when this deal happened, we were very critical of the thing that Etihad was not being named a promoter, because if you go through all the agreements, etc., it was indeed a person in control and was same in the management. Anyway, coming back to this thing, today the jet, the Etihad is 12%, Naresh Goyal is 25%. But then you do not rule out further dilution in the sense that there could be right issue, there could be some preferential offer, so that, and banks have 51%. So ultimately, when these two people are depromoterized, they are no longer a promoter, and some new promoters come and buy the bank's equity, then he can be in a majority control. The issue here is that how soon the banks can wash their hands of this equity, transfer it to some willing agency or willing promoter or willing company who would be able to take risk and manage the Jet Airways. Fundamentally, there is nothing wrong with the aviation industry. It is how better you manage, because there are examples in India where airlines are successful. SEBI Jet is successful, Indigo is successful, and even Go Air is successful. We do not know the financials of Go Airways, but otherwise all these industries are successful as compared to what is happening to Jet and Air India. So you can say it is nothing wrong with the aviation industry, but it is wrong with the individual companies. And if a efficient company is ready to take it over, then there will be no time, there will not be much time to turn it around. And you see the valuation that will be very attractive, because today the Jet share is quoting at 250 rupees from a high of 750 rupees or something like a couple of years back. So you can see that the person who will be investing it will be seeing value for their money and upside if they turn it around.
Dhiraj, Mathur, if I could now come to you, it's source-based information. We are being told that the Goyals, while stepping down from the board, have not exited completely with their investment. I don't know if all of it is at a later stage going to be converted to equity. We do know that Etihad's stake is being pared down from 24% to 12%. That's why you've seen one board member exit. What is going to work for Jet going forward? Is it going to be its gold mine of landing rights, the routes, the parking slots? And then, therefore, does it help that Jet today is going to be a quasi-national company thanks to the ownership resting primarily with the public sector banks? Because it's the government to government, airport to airport that allow the trading in routes and parking slots primarily, maybe outside of London Heathrow.
The routes, the parking slots are what make, and the other thing, what make Jet valuable. Now, in terms of the transfer, it becoming a government-owned airlines, I'm not sure that's going to happen. I don't think so, because I think the lenders have made it very clear that they would like to find a strategic buyer within 2 years. So I doubt if it's going to be a government airline. As far as negotiating, so if the airlines remains, irrespective of ownership, if the entity remains, the entity that signed the contracts for the various parking slots and so on, there is no issue of transfer of any of those, because all that changes the ownership structure, but the entity itself is the same. Now, unless those contracts have a stipulation of requiring or not permitting change in the shareholders or something like that, which I doubt, I don't think that's going to be an issue.
Okay. With that, gentlemen, I'd like to thank both of you for joining us and taking the time out to join here on ET Now. And Pankaj, let's just gloat once more. All of these details were only on ET Now, beginning 8 a.m. We told you at 8 a.m. that Naresh Goyal and Anita would step down, that Etihad's stake would be diluted, that one of the Etihad board members would be stepping down. We're waiting for other finer details. For example, would Vinay Dubey continue to be the CEO of Jet Air? His removal would make it certainly these times far more turbulent. We also reported 2 names that were in the fray that could be suggested by the lenders. It was Mr. Vishwanath, who's an old-timer with Jet, has been on the board of Jet, and the former managing director of SBI. The other name doing the rounds is the former SBI chairman, Janki Ballab. So we'll stay tuned to ET Now. We're right on top of those developments, but the big story being confirmed, and you heard it right here on ET Now and only on ET Now. And stock was, of course, of the day turned out to be Jet. Let me go across to Avan. For that, Avan, the minute ET Now was able to confirm that the board had decided, the Jet board had decided it's time for Naresh and Anita Goyal to step down, and we broke the news of their resignation, there was a huge spike. Take us to the stock impact.